Hello everyone, today we're gonna learn about synchronous and asynchronous operations. So first, to understand what's asynchronous and synchronous operations, we need to understand how visually it works before I start coding, right? So a synchronous operation, in this case both are one thread, synchronous and asynchronous, it will be basically a thread that calls a function, and once that function finishes into the specific period, it will call another function, b function, and once that finishes in that period, it will call another function, c function. While in asynchronous operations, we can have a function starting, and while a function is running and being executed, b function is called, and while a and b function are running, we also have our c function starting, and in this case finishing before a and b function. So that's the main difference between synchronous and asynchronous. Now that you know that, it will be way easier to understand about synchronous and asynchronous into the code itself. So let's go with the first example here, right? Synchronous. We have a function called do something, which returns a void because we are just consoling our log. And what we will do is, once I execute this, I will call console log before call my function that will execute in call, and then it will console log after call. So to see this as a synchronous function, we will just do this. Pretty basic. Pretty much everyone who is starting into the programming world already did that, because everyone start doing synchronous operations before doing asynchronous because of the complexity. It's way easier. But an asynchronous operation, in this case, it will work kind of the same, but the difference is we have our function, also returns a void, but in here we have a set timeout. Let's say you're waiting for your browser to start, or you have some dependency or some API that sometimes get clogged, and you want to have a timeout that will make sure that whatever you're calling, it will work. So having this timeout, you're gonna notice that we're gonna call before call, and then do something, and then after call. But you will have a surprise, because before call and after call are executed before in call. Why so? Because we have the set timeout, and because of the set timeout, this become a synchronous example. So in this case is alright, but let's say if I want before call, I want to call in call, and I want to call after call. How could I do that? And then here is where the word of promises begin. So in order to fix that, we will need to use promises. And before working with promises, we need to understand that promises, they have three states. I think this is the most important thing about understanding promises, because a promise will have the initial state, which is neither fulfilled or rejected, which is called pending. A promise can be fulfilled, which means completed successfully, or rejected, which means it fails. So knowing that whenever you call a promise, you just have these three states, it gets way easier to work with asynchronous functions, Because you know you can either be pending, which means for some reason your promise wasn't triggered, fulfilled, or rejected. Then it gets easier to work with promises. So in this case, we are gonna call do something and returning as the type promise void, because we're just consoling here, console log. But the catch for promises is using resolve. Why? Because if you have a promise but you don't resolve the promise don't have anything that tells the promise like, look, you already finished. You understand? So if I don't have this resolve over here, it would finish the timeout, but it would never print because the promise wouldn't know if it is finished or not. So this is one way of doing. The other way is using the keywords async await. So using async await is the same thing as using then. So there is no difference. If you see async await and then is the same thing. And now what we're gonna do is execute this. I will clear my terminal. So now we have before call, in call, and after call. So this is an example how to work with promises as well.